1. Let's roll. Where were you when 9/11s happened? My dad was supposed to be on the 29th floor of the Twin Towers that day. He had a meeting scheduled, just like any other ordinary morning. But because I was being born that same day, he canceled it. He stayed with my mom. And that single decision, one moment that could have gone differently, changed everything. You know, bro, 9/11s absolutely fucked the world. But inside United Airlines Flight 93, something very different was happening. Passengers had already learned that other planes were being used as weapons, and they understood what their fate might be. Todd Beamer, one of the passengers, managed to make a phone call to an operator. What makes this moment terrifying is not panic, but clarity. He spoke calmly, explained the situation, and even paused to say a prayer. There was no confusion left in his voice. He knew what was coming. Then, after discussing a plan with other passengers, he said his final words. "Are you ready? Let's roll." That sentence was not a goodbye. It was a decision to fight back. The fear here doesn't come from chaos. It comes from courage under certain death. Within minutes, the plane crashed in Pennsylvania. No one survived. But that message remains one of the most haunting ever recorded, because it shows the exact moment when ordinary people chose action over fear, knowing it would likely cost them everything. 2. We hit an iceberg, Titanic.
Iceberg! Iceberg! Right ahead!
The night the RMS Titanic sinking struck an iceberg, the danger did not feel immediate. In fact, one of the most chilling things about that night is how normal everything sounded at first. Early wireless messages sent from the ship described the situation in a calm, almost routine way. One message simply confirmed that they had hit an iceberg and required assistance. No panic. No urgency in the beginning. That's what makes it disturbing. Imagine being on a ship that is slowly filling with freezing water, yet the first words sent out sound like a minor problem. As time passed, the messages became more serious, but those early words remain haunting because they show how people didn't fully understand the scale of the disaster. The Titanic was believed to be unsinkable, and that belief delayed fear itself. By the time reality set in, it was too late. Over 1,500 people died that night. That simple message, "We hit an iceberg," now carries a heavy weight, because behind those calm words was one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history, quietly unfolding in the dark ocean. 3. Houston. Challenger disaster.
Something came apart. When the stage came apart.
Oh my God.
On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster was launched in front of millions watching live. Everything seemed normal at first. The crew communicated with Mission Control in the usual professional tone. There was no sign of fear, no warning in their voices, but just 73 seconds after liftoff, something went wrong. The shuttle broke apart in the sky. The terrifying part is that the final communication wasn't a dramatic warning or a scream. It was routine. It sounded like any other mission update. Then suddenly, silence. No final explanation. No clear message of what they were experiencing in those last seconds. This silence becomes the message itself. It forces people to imagine what might have happened inside the cockpit. Did they realize? Did they understand what was happening? That unanswered question makes the moment deeply unsettling. The last words weren't terrifying because of what they said, but because of how ordinary they sounded right before everything ended in a flash. 4. There's something outside. Dyatlov Pass. In 1959, 9 experienced hikers died under mysterious conditions in what is now known as the Dyatlov Pass incident. When investigators found their campsite, it made no sense. The tent had been cut open from the inside as if they escaped in panic. Some bodies were found barefoot in freezing temperatures. But what makes this story even more chilling is a note found in their journal. It didn't describe a clear danger like an avalanche or attack. Instead, it hinted at strange sounds and unease in the night. The words were vague, almost uncertain, as if they didn't fully understand what they were experiencing. That's what makes it terrifying. When people can't explain what's happening, the fear becomes deeper. These were trained hikers, used to harsh environments, yet something pushed them to leave safety and run into deadly cold. The message doesn't tell us what happened, it only tells us that something was wrong, and that unknown element has kept this mystery alive for decades. Even today, no explanation fully satisfies the strange behavior captured in their final notes. 5. We're losing control. Air France 447. In 2009, Air France Flight 447 disappeared over the Atlantic Ocean. For a long time, no one knew exactly what happened, but when investigators recovered the black box, the final recorded messages revealed a terrifying situation. The pilots were confused. Their instruments were giving incorrect readings, and they struggled to understand what was happening. In the cockpit voice recording, one of them says they are losing control of the aircraft. What makes this moment chilling is the confusion. This wasn't a clear disaster where the cause was obvious. It was uncertainty. The pilots were trained professionals, yet they could not figure out how to recover the plane. Their voices showed stress, but also disbelief. Imagine being thousands of feet in the air, realizing that the systems you trust are no longer reliable. The plane eventually stalled and crashed into the ocean, killing everyone on board. That final message stands out because it captures a moment where knowledge failed, and even experts were left without answers. 6. I love you. 911 calls. During the September 11th attacks, hundreds of people inside the towers made calls that would become their final words. What's strange is that many of these calls didn't focus on describing the disaster. Instead, they focused on something else: connection. People didn't always explain the smoke, the fire, or the chaos around them. Instead, they said things like, "I love you," "Take care of the kids," or "I'm sorry." These weren't random words. They were chosen carefully in a moment where time felt limited. That's what makes these messages terrifying, not because they are loud or emotional, but because they show awareness. The callers understood what was happening, even if they didn't say it directly. Some voices were calm, almost too calm, as if they had already accepted what was coming. Others tried to sound strong, hiding fear behind simple sentences. And then, suddenly, the calls would end. No goodbye, just silence. When you listen to these recordings today, the most disturbing part is not what they said. It's how normal they tried to sound while everything around them was falling apart. 7. I can't breathe. George Floyd. In 2020, the final words of George Floyd were heard around the world. I can't breathe. He said it again and again. Not once, not twice. Repeated over and over. That repetition is what makes it deeply unsettling. These weren't complicated words. They were direct, clear, impossible to misunderstand. And yet, despite how clear they were, the situation did not stop. That's where the fear comes from. It's not mystery. It's reality happening in real time. There's something disturbing about hearing someone clearly express distress, knowing that help isn't coming fast enough. Each time he repeated those words, they carried more urgency, but also more weakness. The voice slowly changed. It became softer, slower, and eventually, it stopped. That moment, when the words disappear, is what stays with people, because it marks the exact point where a voice that was asking to be heard was no longer able to speak at all. 8. No oxygen left. Helios Flight 522. The scariest part of Helios Airways Flight 522 is how quiet everything was. There was no explosion, no sudden chaos. Instead, the problem started silently. Loss of cabin pressure. At first, the pilots didn't fully understand what was happening. Warning alarms sounded, but they were confused, thinking it was something else. Meanwhile, oxygen levels inside the plane were slowly dropping. One by one, passengers and crew began losing consciousness without realizing it. Before communication completely faded, there were messages that showed confusion rather than fear. That's what makes it chilling. Imagine being in danger but not fully understanding it. As time passed, the cockpit went silent. But one person, a flight attendant, remained conscious longer than the others. He tried to take control of the aircraft, but it was already too late. The plane continued flying on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and crashed. What makes this story terrifying is the slow realization. There was no clear moment where panic began, just a gradual fade into silence where the danger was invisible but deadly. 9. Fire! Fire! Apollo 1, during a routine ground test in 1967, something went horribly wrong inside the Apollo 1 fire capsule. The crew was not even in space yet. They were preparing for a mission. Then, suddenly, a voice broke through the communication system, urgent, sharp, and filled with panic. Fire! Within seconds, the situation escalated. Flames spread rapidly inside the cabin, fueled by pure oxygen. The astronauts tried to open the hatch, but it couldn't be released quickly enough. Their final messages were short and desperate, cut off by the speed of the disaster. What makes this terrifying is how fast everything changed. One moment, it was a normal test. The next, it was a fatal emergency with no escape. There was no time to think, no time to plan. Just seconds. And in those seconds, their voices captured a moment of sudden, unstoppable danger. 10. We're going down. Black box. Across different plane crashes, black box recordings reveal something unsettlingly similar. In many cases, the final message is not dramatic. It's simple. We're going down. No long explanation. No emotional speech. Just a clear statement of reality. What makes this chilling is the tone. Pilots are trained to stay calm, and even in the worst situations, their voices often remain steady. That calmness creates a strange contrast. You're hearing someone speak normally, but you know what's about to happen next. It feels almost unreal. In some recordings, there's a short pause after those words, as if both pilots understand what comes next without needing to say it. That silence becomes part of the message. It's the moment where everything has been tried and nothing worked, and in that moment, there's nothing left but acceptance. 11. She was acting strange. Elisa Lam. In 2013, the case of Elisa Lam became one of the internet's most disturbing mysteries. The only message she left behind wasn't spoken or written. It was recorded on a security camera. In the elevator footage, she behaves in a way that feels off. She presses multiple buttons, steps in and out, and looks outside the elevator as if someone or something is there. At one point, she even hides against the wall, almost like she's avoiding being seen. What makes this terrifying is that there is no clear explanation. There are no words telling us what she felt or what she saw, just actions that don't make sense. When people watch the video, they try to understand it, but the more they watch, the more unsettling it becomes. It feels like a message without language. Something is wrong, but we don't know what. Days later, she was found dead under mysterious circumstances, and that silent footage remains the only clue to her final moments. 12. The reactor is gone. Chernobyl. When the Chernobyl disaster happened, the most dangerous part wasn't just the explosion. It was the confusion that followed. In the beginning, workers and engineers couldn't believe what had happened. Some messages from inside the plant described damage, but not the full truth. One chilling realization came when someone understood that the reactor itself was gone. Not damaged, not broken, gone. That moment changed everything, but by then it was already too late. People were already exposed to dangerous radiation without knowing it. The terrifying part is how slowly the truth was accepted. Even as the situation worsened, some still believed it could be controlled. That delay made the disaster far more deadly. The message here isn't just about what was said, it's about how long it took to say it. And in that time, the damage spread silently. 13. Leave me behind, Everest climbers. This happened in the beautiful land on Earth, Nepal. High on Mount Everest, there have been moments where climbers had to face an impossible reality. In extreme conditions, rescue is not always possible. Some climbers, knowing they cannot continue, have made final calls to their families. One climber reportedly told rescuers not to risk their lives trying to save him. He understood that his situation could not be reversed. What makes this terrifying is the calmness of the decision. There is no panic, just acceptance. Imagine being in a place where even survival depends on conditions beyond your control. The message becomes less about fear and more about letting go. And that quiet acceptance, spoken in a calm voice, becomes one of the most haunting parts of these stories. 14. They're inside. Emergency call. In real emergency recordings, there are moments where fear is immediate and close. One of the most chilling types of calls comes from home invasions. In some cases, victims whisper instead of speaking normally, trying not to be heard. One message simply said, "They're inside." No details, no explanation, just those two words. What makes this terrifying is how close the danger is. It's not something far away, it's already there. The whisper adds another layer of fear because it shows the person is trying to stay hidden. Every second matters, and in those seconds, there is no time for anything more than a short warning. That's what makes it so intense. It drops you directly into the moment. 15. Wait. What is unfinished text? Some of the most disturbing last messages are the ones that stop suddenly. There have been real cases where people sent text messages during dangerous situations that ended mid-sentence. One such message reportedly started normally but cut off with something like, "Wait, what is?" and nothing after that. No follow-up, no explanation. That sudden stop is what makes it terrifying. It suggests that something happened instantly, something unexpected enough to interrupt a person mid-thought. When you read a message like that, your mind tries to complete it, but it can't. And that unknown ending becomes more disturbing than any clear answer. It leaves behind a question that will never be solved.